Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back, or it may be afternoon. I don't know why I always say good morning. It's actually noon here. So, today we have with us a special guest. Her name is Sarah Shields, and she is a passionate learner and empathy advocate dedicated to helping people cultivate adult friendships and navigate life's transitions. As a master life coach and communications consultant with 16 years of corporate experience, she specializes in writing, engagement strategy, and facilitation. Sarah works with clients ready to move forward in relationships, careers, and health, offering guidance to help them gain clarity and momentum. Outside of work, she's a wife, a dog mom, and part of a big Italian family. So, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. I know we talked a little bit, and I was reading farther on onto your little form that you filled out, and it hit a nerve immediately because it was talking about people pleasing and your relationship with your father. And I was like, gotta talk to this woman more. So,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of how you got where you are today.
Yeah. So I'm a master coach, as you mentioned, but I never really put the word coach in front of that before, right? I've been a coach for about a year now. But prior to that, all the work that I had done, even in the corporate world and among friends and family, was literally coaching them through a variety of situations. And they're usually big things, right? Like transitions in their life or career. In the work environment, it was literally teaching people how to communicate with each other. My background is in communication. That's what I went to school for. So things that when I was younger, I really thought were kind of common sense. And then I'm sure a lot of your listeners might know common sense isn't always so common. So
Right.
trying to teach empathy and communicating with other people it still continues to be a big part of what I do.
Sounds good. So, and do you have, I mean, you talked about the people pleasing and the relationship with your father and boundaries. And I
Mhm.
think almost every episode that we talk about, we somehow hit on boundaries and somehow hit on people pleasing because it is the it is what we all talk about. It's because
Yeah.
it's what we all struggle with that grew up in anything less than perfect. And let's face it, nobody grew up in perfection.
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought about this for a little while. I think, the structure of mom, dad, 2.5 kids, white picket fence and a dog, that's what's unusual now, right?
Mhm.
We all have some level of imperfect, whatever that means, because perfect is not a thing.
A myth.
Um, but yeah, I think, and I know I've heard other people talk on your podcast. It's not necessarily unusual that you have maybe a one parent or both, or a caregiver who is kind of there, and maybe it feels like they're there out of obligation, or maybe they're a certain form of caregiving in the beginning of your relationship, and then later it devolves into something else. And that's kind of what I found with my relationship with my father. So I think a lot of that stems from, oh my gosh, what's he going to come home with? What kind of attitude is it? You kind of become super hyper aware, right, of your surroundings, and you don't want to mess anything up if he's in a good mood, or if my father continues to be and has always been, he's still alive, a narcissist and a functioning alcoholic. I say functioning, I don't actually know if he's functioning. But he's kind of always been that for my whole life. I just didn't really see it until I'd probably say 10 or 12 years old, that kind of age. Yeah.
So so talk about what it was like because a lot of people that word narcissist seems to be thrown around pretty lightly lately.
True.
And I know it's everybody says it. And I remember going to therapy after 3 years in therapy and saying to my therapist, why didn't you tell me my mother was a narcissist? And
Yeah.
because someone had explained to me what it was and said your mother was the epitome of a narcissist. And
Yeah.
I didn't know. And I remember my therapist said, because I never met your mother, I can't diagnose her. I can't say that. But I'm like, but it might have helped me understanding the amount of manipulation and the guilt and how
Mhm.
literally she could do something so horrendous, and by the end of the conversation I was apologizing to her.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And that was
Exactly.
like it's almost like a gift.
Yes, yeah, yeah, in a twisted way, yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean,
That's exactly right. There were, yes, my whole childhood. Well, I'll just back up quickly. My parents got married very young. Well, today's standards, young. I believe my mother had me when she was 24, and so they got married probably around the time she was 23 or so. So my father would have been maybe 24, 25. And he had, I'd say, from what I understand about his home life, he had a fairly dysfunctional home. He's the oldest of three boys. And his mother, my grandmother, would often kind of make note of every time he'd mess up, or he didn't take care of his little brothers, or he didn't do this thing like his brother did. So he was not, quote, the favorite. And I used that as my own excuse, right? I internalized that, like, this is why he behaves the way he does. But anyway, from a very young age, I kind of noticed things that seemed little and innocuous at the time, like I might have gotten a good grade on a paper, or I was in sports for a long time. I was, and anytime I did something good, or I thought I did something good and wanted to tell him about it, he overshadowed with a story of his own that he wanted to share to me. That, like, I want you to be proud of me. And I never thought about it at the time. I just thought, oh, we're bonding, right? We both accomplished something. I didn't know what he was talking about half the time, but it was kind of like, oh, you did this, well, I did this.
I used to call it with my mother one-upping me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And as a child, it's deflating
Yeah. Yeah.
because you can't, you want some validation. You want to come home and say, "Hey, Dad, guess what happened?" And he's like, "Oh, that's cool, but guess what happened to me?"
That's exactly
And
right.
it's like all of a sudden your story doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it didn't take long for me either to realize, this is probably, but by the time I was, let's see, my sister was 6 years younger than me. So by the time she was born, and I had a little bit more years of school, and I kind of was growing my friendship circles, the things that he was one-upping me with were not true. They, like,
Mm.
literally never happened. So we kind of started including these weird lies that I didn't really know what was the point. Why try to impress me? I'm your daughter. Why are you trying to impress me? And then there were other things that would come up later, like borrowing money from me, babysitting money, things that I had earned, doing chores or whatever,
Mhm.
borrowing money, and then don't tell your mother, that kind of thing.
And for those people that are just listening, there was some serious air quotes around that word borrowing.
That's right. That's right.
If you can't see her, she was like, yeah, or air quoting that big time, like
Yeah.
borrowing, not.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there were more than one instance, but the one that stands out in my head, I grew up in northern New Jersey. And go Giants. Sorry, everybody. And at what point in my life, I was really big into the New Jersey Devils hockey team. And honestly, I didn't really understand hockey, but my friends were into hockey, and I thought it was cool to also be a fan of this team. Well, at a certain point, I think I might have been my mother. I'm not sure. She worked very hard when we were children. Got me a New Jersey Devils sweatshirt. It had the logo on it. I knew it was expensive, so she probably saved up quite a bit for it. Might have been a Christmas gift or something. And I was maybe about 10 or 11 years old when my father asked to, quote, again, air quotes, borrow it because it was cold outside. And he was like a slim frame kind of guy. And I gave it to him, and I never saw it again. And that was like, that sweatshirt meant so much to me. I was finally something, quote, name brand that I could wear
Right.
around hanging out with my friends, right? I later would learn that he sold it to go get beer.
Mm.
And that was kind of one of the earlier memories of him doing that kind of thing. And as I got older, those lies started spinning bigger and bigger. My parents divorced when I was 12. And then eventually my mother remarried and we moved out of the state. And my father had always struggled to keep a job, right? Always struggled with authority. And he made it a proud boast to say that to his buddies. I struggle with authority. I don't like authority. He was the guy that could go into a bar and know everybody's names within 30 minutes. He was the guy, we like to say, that could, quote, sell ice to a snowman kind of
A very
thing. Like, he was
charismatic,
very
charming
charismatic.
person. Yes.
Absolutely. And so for a period of time, we actually didn't really speak. He didn't connect with me or my little sister, really. I don't know if she ever had developed a true relationship with him. And I did speak to her before this. I have her permission to kind of share whatever stories that are relevant to our discussion here. But so for a while we were strained. And then by the time I hit college, and kind of in 21, he started inviting me and my then boyfriend, now husband, out to the bar. So I thought, okay, we're friends now. Maybe we can reestablish a relationship. And that lasted a couple of years before I was like, you know what, I forgot why we were strained, and now I remember, because
Mm.
those big fish stories were coming back. Those big, here's what I did kind of things are coming back. So it's kind of these constant reminders that whatever happened in his youth, maybe he didn't feel like he had the support of his parents or community. He always had to prove himself somehow, but that never translated into let me be the adult and let me be an example for my daughters. That never
Right.
happened.
Well, and unfortunately, when you talk, I mean, that's mostly the people that I work with are children of this generational dysfunctional lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. They're not modeled, so they don't not know how to act. And so they're no model for anybody. So it's just generation after generation of this dysfunctional, not knowing really how to have any kind of healthy relationships. And I don't know what it was like with you. Was it volatile? Was it like abusive, or was it just
It wasn't,
uncomfortable and
thankfully,
painful?
incredibly fortunate. It was not abusive. And he was not physically abusive to my mother or to my sister. He was emotionally manipulative. He could have written a book
Yes.
on it. And so for, my mother is this is a big Italian family I'm talking about. She's one of 7 kids. And she
Mm,
was the first of her siblings to get divorced. There was a lot of embarrassment and guilt around that. And the fact that my father had always been around. He tried to kind of loop my other family members into these kind of small scale cons that he had,
yeah.
borrowing money, writing fake checks, trying to skirt a system somehow just to get a, a job that'll pay him, under the table for some cat, whatever it was. He was always trying to scheme his way into or out of things. And that bled into his relationship with my sister and I. And I think we all probably remember where we were sitting on 9/11. And at the time I was in high school, and it was later on visiting him with my then boyfriend that he was around his drinking buddies at the time. I think we met up for trivia at like a local bar or something like that. And he started to talk about his experience. He was born and raised in New York, but then moved to New Jersey in his teenage years. And over the course of this conversation, what came up was, yeah, they got my picture in the paper when I went into New York City to help clear out the rubble. And immediately I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I don't want to swear on you, but it's a lot of
No, you can.
words.
You're fine.
Okay.
I saw in the notes,
Really,
you're like, I don't know if I can cuss.
I
Sometimes it
don't know.
slips out. Yes, you're totally cool with
Okay.
that. That is
Okay.
fine.
But I thought, you've got to be shitting me. You are. So what had happened was that probably in his early 20s, he had gotten his license taken away for whatever reason, probably a DUI of some sort. And he never got it back. He never bothered. He doesn't believe in, putting his money in a bank. So he's kind of this person that has this mentality, anti-government, anti-structure. So he
Right.
lives his life, quote unquote, under the table, right? So I thought, wait, how would you get to New York City? You don't have a car. We were living in Maryland at the time. It's not like we were in New Jersey. So you don't have a car. You don't have any friends that would take you that far. And he said at the time he had a newspaper in his pocket, and he pulled his newspaper out and he showed this grainy, blurry photo of people like firefighters and people pulling rubble out of the trade center where the trade center had been. And he pointed his finger at this blurry man in the background of the photo. And he said, see that? That's me. And the embarrassment. Oh my God, Tammy, my face. I was like purple and red, and I was nauseous all at the same time. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so that's kind of when, to me, the lies up leveled. Now
Yeah.
you're taking a horrific event that we're still reeling from,
And
that
making it about you.
and making it about what is happening. What did I just witness? And I kind of looked at my boyfriend at the time, and I don't know if he heard the conversation, but I was like, we need to leave. I need to leave. I can't be here anymore. So that was kind of a major, these like memories of like major lies that, like, what
Yeah.
was the point of that? What was the point of sharing that?
Well, and I mean, that's just so common.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you have the alcoholic aspect of it and the alcoholism,
Yeah.
it's a lot of times the narcissism, and it's what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of
Yeah,
thing.
right. Yeah.
But the manipulation and the dishonesty and the lying, it's all part of both.
Yeah.
Always part of both.
Yeah.
And you just, and that's honestly for the adult children out there listening, that even, in your healing journey, wherever you're at in this journey, that's very common too. I
Hmm.
became a master manipulator and a very dishonest person because honestly, it became habit when I was little out of survival. I
Yeah.
could look you dead in the face and make you believe anything I needed you to believe, whatever helped me at the moment. And then
Yeah.
there was a point at, yes, it became a habit. And I would tell, and I remember reading that in a book somewhere about adult children of alcoholics. And one of the traits is, or one of the questions they asked is, why do you lie when you don't have to?
Right.
And I was like, wow. And that opened like a whole set of just, self reflection on myself, because that was something that I had done. I was so used to it.
Yeah.
And you're so used to your stories not mattering and being unvalidated that you need to feel important. You need to be the center of things. But like you said, throwing yourself into a world catastrophe and
Right.
making it about you is at a level that nobody should get to.
Right, right. And to that point, I've now since, met people who have said similar things. Like, this is how I then interpreted that behavior, and it happened to me, and I turned into a kind of person that did that sort of thing. And part of me kind of feels like I did the opposite. I could see how hurt my mother was every time he lied or every time he manipulated. So she became, and therefore I became, hyper aware of the words that I used and
Mhm.
what I said that I did versus what I was terrified to lie and be caught in a lie that I couldn't spin my way out of. And so I mean, my stepbrothers tease me to this day. I was the goody two shoes, but I was so worried that I was going to somehow deeply hurt the people around me. And I mean, we were so young. My mother was working like 3 jobs at a time. I kind of took over, quote unquote, like parenting my little sister. And so from a very young age, and probably she's still, much to her chagrin, probably because I still do that. But I was so hyper aware of the words people use. I think that's why I was so drawn to communications, because it
Right.
matters. It matters the words you use and how you can or can't back it up, and how those words affect people. It sounds cliche, but it's true. It ripples. All of it ripples, and it affects people you're not even aware of who your words are affecting or how they're affecting them. And that's not to say that you should live your life in a box, right? That's not what I'm suggesting. But you need to be very cognizant of the words that you use to other people and to yourself. That's huge, to yourself.
That's incredibly huge, because a lot of the words that you do use to yourself are complete lies just fed
Yeah.
to you by other people. And that's where the work comes in, is
Yeah.
just knowing and being aware. And like I said, I've developed, you made that comment and I laugh. Your father could sell an ice icicle to an Eskimo or whatever
Yeah.
you said, and
Yeah.
I say that all the time. And then I'm like, okay, so it's great. My mother was a master manipulator and I learned from the best. But yeah, I'm great at sales.
Yeah.
Use it for
Right.
good,
Right.
use it for good,
Exactly.
not to hurt people with it. And that's just part of the process and the growing process and the learning process. And everybody does one way or the other. It seems like
Hmm.
on every tipping, there's a tipping point on each decision, on when you grow up in this craziness and you either make bad choices or you make good choices. You either are honest or you're not. And people, you might make a good choice in one area of your life and then make a bad choice in another. So there's nothing wrong. So with the people out there listening, I always say
Yeah.
I'm exactly the byproduct of what I could have been expected to be or should have expected
Right.
to be. But now that I'm aware, or not even now, I'm talking 35 years ago, once I became aware, now it is my responsibility to start making the better choices.
Absolutely. And you might be, for anybody who's listening, you think maybe my work or my life doesn't maybe showcase the kind of person I turned out to be because of you might be surprised if you like take a minute to step back and look at maybe your job or the relationships you have or your hobbies, clubs, things you're involved in. You might be really surprised at how those qualities actually do come out. My younger sister right now, she works with kids and builds after school programs for them. So she might not even be aware of it. She is a caregiver for small kids and in a pretty disenfranchised community where she lives. So
Right.
I mean, that's and she is the one who I might have turned out, a certain kind of way, being really hyper aware of the words I used, and she's the one who got super sarcastic, and that's her, her sense of humor. So in a
Yep.
lot of ways, we kind of developed 180 from each other, but at the same time, the work that we're doing absolutely is indicative of what we maybe didn't have and what we wish we could have had, whether we know it or not.
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's so important when you're out there and you're choosing a coach. You're a coach, you coach now, right?
Yeah.
Are you a therapist too? Are you a
No,
coach or
not a therapist. Like I said, that I'm
okay.
not a therapist and I don't play one on TV, but I am a coach.
I say the same thing. I'm like, hey, just disclaimer, like, you know, I'm not either, but people say that. And that's why when people are choosing a coach or a therapist or a
Mhm.
counselor or whatever it is, a lot of us got into that reason for that. And,
Yeah.
you learn so much through your healing journey. Like you said, you've been doing this forever. I used to say that I was the best educated mentor and friend of
Right.
anybody in the world. I just did it for free for hundreds of hours. And just because I knew so much from doing my own journey, but be very cautious when you choose a coach because
Yeah.
there's a lot of wounded healers out there.
Absolutely.
And
Oh my gosh,
wounded,
100%.
a
Yeah.
wounded healer can be it's like a teacher that gets triggered by children
Hmm.
because of their past. They're not doing those children any service. They're doing
Right.
them a disservice by being a wounded healer. You go in to teach to help all these children and you're still it's
Yeah.
so I mean, but it's every day forward, and again, it's just awareness. It's just
Absolutely. It's critical to if I can't help a client, I will point you to. I'm trying to build a network of other people around me, right? That are also really heart-centered business owners or coaches or therapists,
yep.
whatever it is. So if I can't help you, I will point you to a person who I think might be able to.
And I
Um,
respect that. I call it staying in my lane.
yeah, absolutely,
I don't drive
absolutely.
out of my lane. I have
Yeah,
a very good friend that is a grief coach, and she lost her husband. And if someone comes to me, I'm like, yeah, I can work on mindset work. Can work
mhm,
on positivity. I can work on all this stuff, but I've never lost a husband or a child. So I
yeah,
can't pretend to understand.
right,
So here's a grief
right.
coach.
Right.
Go
Right. You
for it.
coach from your experience. Exactly right. You coach from your experience. And while my relationship, or at this point, kind of non-relationship with my father, was definitely a foundation, a lot of the work I started with was career-wise, right? I was
Hmm.
seeing a lot of those really poor behaviors in a lot of roles that I was in. Not everyone. I absolutely had jobs that I loved and people I loved working with, but there was a theme there, right? There was a theme of the way people are treated, and that really informed me and my decision to leave a corporate job, which was safe, right? It was secure for the most part, secure. But I got to this point where, and the only analogy I can use is like a boiling teapot. Like I was like, something needs to change, and it needs to change yesterday. I don't know what needs to change, but I got to do something. So I was
Yeah.
really about to boil over. And that's when I was like, okay, enough is enough. So that is what I tell a lot of people who are looking for a coach. I can work with you if that's the kind of place where you're at. Like, I need to change. I don't know what I need to change, but something has to give. Absolutely. I can help help you do that because I've done it. I've done it myself. But as you said, I'm trying to now learn from other people like yourself that I've met. Like, here, how else can we kind of use the same skill sets in other areas?
Right.
Last year, unfortunately, I had a miscarriage, and we've been struggling to have our own children. So now I do not pretend to understand what it is like to have a scenario like that happen repeatedly. But I have a little bit more insight now into what it is to go through a loss that you never really get over, and you're terrified it might happen again.
Yeah.
So trying to kind of collect those stories from other people, just to say, how can I help you? How can I, and if I can't help you, who can I kind of share that might be able to?
And if nothing else, when you're going on this journey, I just call it a journey. It's fun to me to call it a journey. But
Yeah.
when you're on this, if nothing else, God willing, you are developing a more compassionate, empathetic,
Hmm.
just for everybody, not only other people, but yourself too,
Yeah.
because that's, like you said, the words are so important. So you said, I heard you say just a minute ago, you kind of threw in a not so good relationship. So is there contact with you and your father?
You know, it's it's kind of strange. For years I told myself and my sister for that matter, Daddy's sick. He doesn't know what he's doing. And I had to kind of convince myself there's something that shifted in his brain at some point in time, and he can't understand his reality. He kind of creates his own realities. And so that was a narrative I told myself for a long time. And then in November 2021, my sister got married. And now my father's been fairly absent most of her life. He texts a couple times a year to say, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday. But that was really it. And there were a number of times where he might go out and get drunk at a bar, call her and cuss her out on the phone because she doesn't call him and she
Yeah.
doesn't give him the
Drunk
time of day.
dialing. Yep.
Oh my, yeah. And he never did that with me. So I was shocked and appalled and embarrassed that he would treat his daughter like that. Or that anyone would be treated like that. So in November 2021, she was getting married. She kind of warned him ahead of time, hey, I am getting married. I just want you to know I would like for you to come. But she had opted for my stepfather to walk her down the aisle. He is the one who has been there for her
Right.
whole life. And my father then kind of went on a rampage.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you? I'm your father. This is he is not your father, I'm your father kind of to kind of talk. He's very much of the opinion that blood matters more than anything, whether you're in the picture or not. So she has done, I give my sister a lot of credit, for many years. She has done her own therapy to work through this breaking of the guilt feeling of this is just because he's your father doesn't mean that you have to have him in your life. I had to do the same kind of work, and a lot of people do, right? Just
Yes.
because they're blood does not mean you didn't choose to be part of this family.
Right.
So, uh, the day of her wedding, we were back and forth about whether or not he might show up. It's very possible he is the kind of person that would not tell anybody and would just show up. And
Right.
at the moment, she said that she really preferred he didn't, but when he didn't, that hurt her deeply. Our family is very close. We're very fortunate to have a big family that has and still continues to hang out, and we like we like hanging out with each other. I know not a lot of people can say that, so I know how lucky we are. And to have that happen, that he actually didn't come and he didn't call, he didn't acknowledge anything, gutted her, and that gutted me. So I from then on, I can't. That's enough. That's
Yeah.
enough now. You just you fuck with the wrong person. Now you fucked with my sister. She's my best friend. There's no way.
Yeah.
So from then on, we've not contacted him. He has selective memory though, so occasionally he'll text "Happy Birthday," "Merry Christmas." He doesn't get a response from me or her. So I'd like to say we've cut off all contact, but he still, occasionally will text. Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that's the answer. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's not always the answer. I always say, especially if the person is close in proximity, that if you can mend something, it's worth a try. But
Yeah.
when the ultimate goal is that you and your sister need to take care of you and your sister.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you can't do that if there's toxicity coming back every time. You can't walk. I mean, there's nothing worse than having anybody in your world that keeps you on eggshells.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
that's probably how you grew up, and it's
Yeah.
enough is enough. And like you said, you get to that point where enough is enough.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think we're both married and we're trying to really balance how we can reparent ourselves in the way we needed him to do and not put that responsibility or that expectation on our partners. And
yes.
that is difficult for me, speaking of just for me, that is difficult, right? I want my husband to show up for me in ways that maybe my father didn't, but they're obviously very distinctly different
Yeah.
relationships, distinctly different people. It's difficult to walk that line, and I have to be very clear when I communicate with my husband. Now, I don't want you to solve this problem. I just need you to listen, right? I just need you to hear me when I tell you what I need. But I also had to get brave enough to tell him what I
Yeah.
need. And not have that expectation that, oh, he knows. He's known me for 15 years. He knows what I know. So we both have to kind of walk that fine line of here's how we can do this for ourselves and not expect our partner to do it for us.
Right. Absolutely. Totally understood.
Yeah.
Well, I love that on the podcast, there are different versions. There's I've reconciled with the parent. I've not. I've this. That there's so many different versions of the story, and ultimately, it's just what has to work best for you.
Yeah.
You can't. So for the listeners, don't be like, oh, well, she went no contact. That's my answer. Bam.
Right.
It's not always that cut and dry or black and white ever. It's never black and white, and
No.
it's always something that you have to take into consideration. But you had said somewhere, I read that you had set some serious boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So when the boundaries don't work, you have to go to the next step for your own sanity and for your own peace of mind.
Right. Exactly. You're bound. And I've talked about this with other clients that I've had. If someone does not respect your boundaries, that's them. That's their issues. Those are their problems. And it's not for you to solve.
No,
your boundaries are an opportunity for you to grow. It's like parting the waters, right? You're kind of clearing the path so that you can move forward. And if anybody's trying to get out of in your way, that's something that they need to work on. They need to work through, and they might not ever understand or realize they need to work through those things.
Right.
You're
Absolutely
responsible for you. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, so it sounds like your sister's doing well. Everybody's doing well.
Yes. Yes. Thankfully, yes.
Yes. And I love the work that you do because I think it's amazing. So how do you work your business? Do you do one-on-one group coaching? What do you do?
Yes and yes. So I do offer one-on-one, and I offer kind of workshops. So right now, max is 15 people in a workshop. Everything's virtual at the moment, but I have 12, 48, and 60 session packages on my website. So but I prefer to do obviously a consultation first. I want to talk to you to make sure that we can work with each other and I can help you. And again, if not, that's the place where I'll tell you, well, if I can't help you, here's this other person who might be able to. So I absolutely encourage let's get on a phone call first and we'll talk through what might be needed. But there's a variety of tools that are available that I don't know if a lot of people are aware of. So I try to bring those into my coaching. So if there's opportunities to talk about maybe a change in career, or I've had clients talk about their relationships with their family members or friends or whatever. And then out of that, what has also come out of this is an interest to try to help people connect with as adults to other adults. It's kind of tough to make friends, new friends, when you're an adult, right? It's kind of something that's more easily attained. Maybe if you're a parent and you have small kids and they have friends, and not always, sometimes that works out. But making friends as an adult is tough. So there's other conversations that come out of that. Maybe how can we grow your community, right? We all need community. It doesn't matter what you might be going through. Everyone needs to connect with at least one other person. And community could be one person. It could be 5 people. It could be
but you can't
whatever.
do it alone. You can't be alone. And there's so much power in community, and there's so much power in collaboration. And just, if nothing else, just knowing that there's people out there that understand or that have been where you've been, or can just lend an ear. I mean, that's what's so important.
Yeah. And even if your community is somebody who, if you like comic books and you just want to sit down and talk about comic books, that's rad. Do whatever makes you feel good, right? As far as we know, we have this one life. Maybe we don't, maybe we have more. But for right now, be here. Be now. Be in this moment, in this life, and surround yourself with the things that uplift you and where you can kind of share that feeling. Let's lift each other up together.
Amen. I love it. So if people want to reach you and find out more, where do they reach you? What's the best place?
My website is the best place. It's groundandgrowcoaching.com.
And I will put that in the show notes.
Thank you. I'm also on Facebook, Ground and Grow Coaching. The website is A-N-D, and on Facebook it's ampersand, Ground and Grow Coaching.
Okay.
But the website also has, where I'm on Instagram and Threads. I'm just learning about Threads, so give me some time to get through Threads. I'm trying to post there where I can.
I don't know. I don't understand that. I opened up my Instagram yesterday or the other day, and it said 63 people have viewed this on Threads. I'm like, what's a thread?
Yeah,
Like,
right,
okay, I'm
exactly.
really behind the times, but I'm like, but 63 people saw it.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's good. That's awesome. But
It
in
is
addition
fun.
to my website, I'm right now partnering with somebody who's doing coaching for businesses. So I'm excited to talk about that a little bit, just because she's got some awesome programs coming up. So my colleague owns a business called Agility for All, and her website is agilityforall.com. And right now, I'm partnering with her on programs around leadership development. And while that sounds separate from one-on-one coaching, the foundation of all of her programs is bringing humility and compassion into a work environment. I won't say back into a work environment, because I don't know, frankly, if it's ever really been there, but bringing humility and empathy and compassion into the workplace where it matters the most. She's got some awesome programs. Right now, if you're listening to this in October, there's a program coming up in January called The Art of Inclusive Leadership. In October, she's running a bunch of discounts for that. But people can reach out to me for more information. She's got some awesome programs there. So if you're a leader and you've got a team underneath you, I highly, highly recommend. I cannot recommend these programs enough. They're
I
fantastic.
love those programs. I actually did a talk and it was called Trauma Informed Leadership in a Trauma Reactive World. And
Yeah.
just we lose so much productivity because we just don't know how to deal with people compassionately.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
don't, and
exactly.
so many people are going through so much stuff and they're walking on eggshells in their whole life. And if you could just
Yeah.
treat people differently and use, like you said, communicate differently, use different words. I mean, the words
Yeah.
mean everything.
Yeah.
I,
And it,
I said that the other day, if they would just take the expression, what's wrong with you, out of the vocabulary,
yes,
so
absolutely.
many people's days would be different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it goes beyond, checking the box for diversity and inclusion efforts. Even that. I mean, she's got some great programs there too. So if anyone's questions, they can reach out to me. But I love what she's doing with the workplace.
Well, that is awesome. So before we go, this has been super fun and I could probably talk to you forever. But before we go, what would you suggest, or what would be some words of wisdom or some final words from you to the audience to kind of just make their day a little better?
No matter how big or small the thing is, find something that just makes you happy, even for an hour, for a day. If you can, it doesn't matter what it is. It might be a movie or a podcast or a piece of music. If you can kind of think 1 hour at a time and find something in that space that makes you happy and just fills you with this feeling of, yeah, I fucking got this. This is my life I'm living. Do that. Do that thing. Like I said, we're only here once, as far as we know. And even if we're not, we still should be doing this, right? we're to pick something that is going to get you through 1 hour, one day at a time, that makes you truly happy, not for your kids, not for your partner, truly just for you.
Yep, that is very well said. The absolute best relationship you should have is with yourself, because at the end of the day, you're with yourself all the time.
Yes.
That should be the best
Yeah.
conversations, the best attitude, the best relationship ever should be with yourself. Very,
Yeah.
very well said. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Tammy. This was fun.
Yeah, it was absolutely fun. And for all the people out there listening, you heard it. Remember, it's just one moment in time when you think it's going to be bad or you think it's bad. It's going to pass.
Hmm.
Just choose happy. Just choose to be happy. Choose to move forward. Choose to stop stressing about the past and stressing about the future. Just
Yeah.
be in the present and enjoy the moment. It's my best piece of advice. And I thank you guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.